Good morning. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Bill Baker with Firestorm, and we're pleased that you can join us for this Crisis Coach webinar. This is part of the 2017 series of webinars sponsored by the Eastern Great Lakes Association of Contingency Professionals, and also, likewise, the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce. We'd also like to have you become our friend. On Facebook, we're Firestorm Solutions. Twitter, Firestorm Soul. You can follow us on a hashtag for this session. That hashtag is Crisis Coach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage risk and crises. Firestorm expertise is crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communications, crisis public relations, and consequence management. We wish to remind you that the presentation today is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion. This information should also be read in conjunction with the advice from your organization's personal counsel. Please do not interpret this information as legal advice or legal opinion. The Greater Rochester Eastern Great Lakes chapter of the Contingency Planners Association is headed up by Dr. Michael Redman. Dr. Redman is out working with clients today. Our other sponsor of this is also the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce. You can go to firestorm.com. You can watch past webinars in this series, or you can register for future monthly webinars. Our presenter today is our very own Karen Masullo. Karen is the Chief Intelligence Officer and Executive Vice President of Firestorm. Her work at Firestorm is in the social media monitoring, developing webinars, all other kind of audiovisual tools. She has extensive experience in providing training, so if you need any kind of training within your organization, Karen is the person that we would have you work with. Karen, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Bill, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. If you are not a member of the Rochester Chamber of Commerce or the Association of Contingency Planners, we welcome you to this session underwritten and supported by those organizations. If you're a member of a like organization, please reach out to us and let us know, and we'll be happy to add these sessions as a value add for your group as well. If you have any comments during our session today, you can use the GoToWebinar dashboard widget. Should be on the right side of your page. There's a little chat area in there. And if we're not able to get to your question during the session, and today's material is quite long. A great deal happened this week. But if we're not able to get to your question during this session, we'll certainly follow up with you afterward. So thank you for joining today, and you can watch a recording of this session or share it with those that you wish to who may be on vacation or on break during this spring period at youtube.com/continuity experts, or you can navigate to that from our website at firestorm.com. Enough with the commercials, right? Okay, you know, when I was planning this session today, I think we always ask that question, what keeps you up at night, right? And it depends on the day. Someone told me recently, it depends on what's going on in the world that keeps me up at night. And so I wanted to think about how we frame the term predictive intelligence. Predictive intelligence is a term of art that is used by marketing, heavily used by marketing. And it says that for marketers, if you listen to this specific song, you most likely like this specific book, and you might fit into this group of people who like this specific television station, and those specific people use this type of deodorant and shampoo. And it really narrows down your tribe or your clan, and I think almost in a way that precludes other information from coming in. And that's why we see news not being digested, but rather just flashing by, and we have conversations with people based on headlines rather than based on the meat of the matter. So when we look at predictive intelligence, we look at it in a different way. We look at predictive intelligence as a network of people and technology tools that allow us to look into behaviors of potential concern. We don't look at private data or information. We look at publicly posted data, and all we're doing is aggregating it. Now, the one thing technology can't do is what we do, or what a third party might do, and we advise a third party do this type of work for you because they can be more objective. So we're not making hiring decisions in the future based upon something we see in someone's profile. That's important. But what we do by sitting in that chair is take that data and information that we're reviewing and collecting and put it into context. Is it a song lyric? Is it a poem? Is it what someone considers to be a joke? That obviously we need to explain to people what a joke is today. You don't get in a line to get on an airplane and joke about a bomb or terrorism, right? So there are things that we don't do in the workplace either. So what we do is look at that aggregate information in the context of your geography, your building, your company, your brand, and then in addition to leveraging technology, we also leverage the face-to-face relationships you have or could have, and we may recommend how you expand that network so that you can create a strong, connected web should crisis occur. So let's look at what are we thinking about when we talk about that? Well, certainly on your property or in your building, I mean, we don't want to see a loss of life. We've all experienced significant natural disasters, or if you haven't, thank goodness, knock on wood, if that still works, if you can find real wood. But, you know, we were all part of Hurricane Sandy on the coast. We had Matthew here in my city last year. I live in South Carolina in Charleston. So natural disasters all across the country we must plan for. Oklahoma, Joplin. We have injury on our property, and that may not be an employee. It may be a visitor. It may be a vendor. Maybe a customer or a client. How are we going to manage that, and how will it affect us? Many years ago, I was working on a project where I worked with a company where we transitioned large groups of employees when the company was restructuring or downsizing. And I've experienced a lot of internal sabotage and external sabotage. I've seen employees show up for work wearing bulletproof vests, which is never a comforting feeling. But in one situation during the restructuring, we also had a domestic violence incident in the parking lot that resulted in a death. So how do we respond to that, and how are our plans in place to allow us to reach out effectively to all of those people who need to know in a case like that? What about a major supplier interruption or a supplier to your supplier? I think part of your intelligence network has to be an understanding of what's going on in the world as it affects your business. And that's where we get into that. Let's not just read the headline, but let's actually read the meat of the story. If you have a key supplier in Oregon, and for some reason there is a situation that precludes any products or services coming out of Oregon for a period of time, you need to know that so that you have a conversation with an alternate supplier, or does your supplier have an alternate route, right? So we really have to think through those things in a common sense way and make sure we have a contingency plan in place, and we know who the network of people is to have the conversation with, and we are connected in a technological way so that we can both listen into the message and get our message out. We may lose one of our key clients, and that may affect our ability to conduct business. We may have a public brand damage event, and I think we're going to look at something that happened in the news this week. We're going to look at what people say is really the number one thing they're concerned about today, and that's hacking or data leaks or a data breach. And, you know, they say there are only two types of companies, right? The ones that have been breached and the ones that don't know they have been breached. You could have a failure of your senior leadership team. And this is an important point. And for those of you that are senior leaders on the call, I don't want to pick on you, but what happens in a crisis is our senior leadership team says, I'm the one who needs to go talk about this. We saw that this week with the CEO of a major company putting out a statement before all of the facts in the situation were clearly known, and without understanding the impact of the statement he was about to make. He affected the stock of the company, and if there's one thing that's unforgivable, it is that. And then, of course, we have the worry of terrorism. And it is a constant thought in the back of our heads. So I want you all to think right now, everybody on the phone, those of you that are sitting maybe in a conference room with teammates having a little breakfast, I want you to think about what is the worst thing that could happen right now today to your organization. Not a zombie apocalypse, not a meteor falling through the middle of the roof, but let's think about that. I was talking to one person about that, and she said, you know, I'm really concerned about the boiler at plant, you know, building B. She said, I'm very concerned we're not going to get that fixed in a way that's ready to go. I can't shut down production. That was a scary thing to me. It was a scary conversation to have. So what is that risk in your organization? And then ask the more important question, can you handle it? Are you ready? Are you prepared? If you get a call right now that says someone just dragged one of our customers down the hallway, it was filmed and it went viral on YouTube, you ready for that? And if you're not, let's think about how to get ready for that. So when we asked a broad question of about 1,000 clients of Firestorm, we said, what crisis event would be the number one concern for your organization? And the cyber aspect was really top in front and center. So we know people are thinking of that, people are planning for that. We do a lot of testing. Your IT team is working on that, but it's not just an IT problem, right? It's a complete organizational problem, and we have to look at it in that light. Natural disaster was the second most concerning because we know there's just nothing we can do about that other than really predict and plan and perform, right? We know it's coming. Weather is an amazing, it's amazing in the way we're able to predict weather patterns today. I know I have to bring my cushions in from my porch this afternoon because at 3:30 it's probably going to rain. I mean, that's how pinpointed we are today. But some of these other threats, I think most might be higher or should be higher. And there are a lot of other nuances to these events that we really need to think about and possibly give a little bit more attention to, at least in terms of how will we respond and are we set up in order to do so. So when we think about that number one crisis that you're concerned about, when you're sitting there right now saying, okay, the worst thing that could happen today is our ABC client pulls out for some reason because they account for 50% of our revenue this year. Who do you need to contact in order to manage that? Are you going to have to restructure your workforce? Are you going to be able to encourage your sales team to immediately go out and replace that revenue? Who needs to know? Who needs to be a part of that immediate conversation, that first hour conversation? Who's going to be affected by it? Well, certainly your employees. What happens when the news leaks? What happens when the competitor who won the business says in a press release, we just got the ABC account and everybody over there is drinking champagne and your employees read that and come to you? How's that? How are you going to manage that situation? Let me give you a high level sort of an example of when something unexpected goes wrong. We're not sure how to respond. And what does it tell us about what could go wrong next? The city of Dallas has 156 outdoor sirens. Last weekend, someone hacked every tornado siren in Dallas. Well, if you can hack them to all go off at the same time, you can certainly hack them not to. And if you have access to that, what else do you have access to? Now, some people are making a joke of it because there has been a tradition in Dallas and other cities to hack into the road closed next 5 mile signs, men working, please take caution, to celebrate certain events and memes that are out there. And there was some joking about this, the sirens represented Mothra versus Godzilla. The zombie apocalypse did win in this particular case. But it's not a joke, is it? If you are in a multi-story, multi-tenanted office building, and suddenly those sirens go off, what happens next, right? Everybody evacuates, and you all evacuate to one place, and there's panic, and people get injured. If you're in an elevator and that happens, what happens? You're panicked. So I mean, there's just so much more than this sort of a lighthearted little joke. What does that mean? So think about that for your organization. What if that happened in your city right now, right this moment while we're on the phone? I was staying in a hotel many years back in Cleveland. I was working on a project, and someone was messing around with the fire alarm system in the hotel, and the alarms went off. It started about 10:30 at night and continued until about 3:30 in the morning every half hour. And I can tell you, the first couple of times it went off, it was pretty frightening. After, the third hour, you kind of get used to it. But the initial fear was quite broad. I will tell you, no one ever communicated with anybody in the rooms. We never got a call from the front desk. There was no follow-through at all. Okay, so let's look at an outlier example. So the crane collapse last year across the Tappan Zee Bridge. Certainly people were hurt and they were injured, and that was an upsetting situation. But for anybody on this call today who might take the Tappan Zee Bridge from Westchester into the city or vice versa, were you delayed? Did this delay you? Did this delay the bridge and its renovation more than it would have previously? Did it delay employees from getting to work? Do you know? How would you know? How would you be hooked into that? So when we see something come across the news and we say, oh, that happened, we're not really thinking sometimes about the impact that it can have on our people, our clients, our customers, our employees, our vendors. And it's important that we do. You may know that there was a significant fire recently on I-85 in Georgia, just north of Atlanta. It's considered Atlanta, but I guess it's just north. Bill can correct me. And recently I was talking to our CEO, and he had to, I think he was going to Alabama. I can't recall exactly where. He's always going somewhere. And he called me quite early in the morning, and he was already up and fresh, and I could hear he was driving. It was like 6 o'clock or so. And I asked him what time he had left Atlanta, and he said, well, I had to leave at 3:30 because that whole block of highway is gone. So I have to take an alternate route, and everybody is taking that alternate route. And I knew if I left any later, it would be just sitting in traffic for the next 4 hours. So he said I had to get out of here early, so I avoided that. So for people in Atlanta right now, how are they getting where they need to go with this major piece of highway gone? This is just a huge chunk that burned out. Think about your most major artery. That was hard to say. Think about your most your port system, your railroad system. If a major chunk of that suddenly was missing, Would you get your goods and services in, and would you be able to get your goods and services out? Would your people be able to get to work? Do you have an alternate plan? Do you have a way to communicate externally about that? Same thing happened in Lynchburg, Virginia, and many other places across the country. In Canada, we saw a significant situation where an entire town was burned because of a train incident that was carrying hazardous chemicals. We have to think through these things. So if you're in a city or a town and something happens and the entire town is evacuated and we don't know when they're going to be able to come back, how are you going to conduct business? What if the entire town that was evacuated makes the widget that is one of the key parts of whatever product it is you put out? Think through those things. So how do we start? Well, part of your intelligence network starts with the physical location of your business and what's around it. What is the closest building to you? If you're in a rural area, if you're in an urban area, what is next door to you? What does it house? Are you in a multiple tenant property? Are you in a high rise? Do you know who else is in that building with you? Has that building ever had a drill? Ever had an evacuation drill? Do you have any idea what you might do or how you might get out of that building, where you would be safe, or your people? What's behind you? What's in front of you? If you're evacuating and you're running behind your building and there's a river, you don't have any place else to go. Are you connected via social accounts to your neighbors? People discount how important it is to know your neighbors face to face, and you do that through the wonderful organizations like a Chamber of Commerce or other associations, but we forget to connect socially via technology, so that if you need to get a message out quickly, you can. Recently, we had a client that was telling me that they found out about a vulnerability and a problem that was going on at a building, at a company in their corporate park because of a social media message. So do you know what all of these little businesses around you make? If there's a welding shop, do you know what materials they use? Is there some sort of a chemical being produced somewhere near you? You have to know these things. And so in order to foster great communication, connect with your local mayor, your chamber, your association, your fire, your police, other law enforcement and first responder organizations and officials, and have someone monitor that information. We do monitoring for a school system in Illinois. And one of the things we monitor, in addition to all of those types of accounts that I just mentioned, is we monitor the scanner. So we can let them know, heads up, there's been an accident. It's a social media feed, by the way. It's not, we don't monitor the actual scanner, although we could, but it comes through a social media feed. And it lets us know if, you know, they're going to have to reroute some buses that morning. Last month I told you about another school system that we work with that had a tree come down and had to figure out how to reschedule classes. So monitoring via social can help move that message forward quickly. Also, when you're connected face-to-face, you can make sure that you're calling the right people, etc. So call trees are important, but social media trees are as well. And we want to hope that these different connections, this intelligence network that we create, can help us in a crisis. And hopefully messaging these people during a crisis, either on the phone, face-to-face, or via some technology, will help keep people safer. Because you know, and we know, that most of the information we find out in a crisis in the first hour or so is completely wrong. So it gives us an opportunity to also make sure that the correct information is being put out. Remember, we're never going to be able to manipulate the media. There's no reason to try. But in this day of social conversation, we certainly have the opportunity to make sure the message that's going out has the correct information. Now, you have to make sure that who's ever messaging out on behalf of your company is taking the time to get the right information. There is no requirement that you must speak to the media, and you certainly never speak to the media without knowing what the exact facts are. We don't make things up. We don't add things to a story. Now, the next step from looking around you and understanding who your neighbors are and physically where you're located is somebody around you a risk? Is someone's business near you a target for some reason? We had a company, I think I've mentioned this to you in the past, an energy company that had their headquarters in one spot in a downtown area, and then they had what they called their Brainiac barn in another area. I think it was about 15 miles outside of town in a more rural area, and you wouldn't know it was there unless you knew it was there. Well, that Brainiac barn was being targeted by eco-terrorists. And so we developed a monitoring approach so that we could listen to publicly posted conversations that were occurring on Twitter where they were planning with a group of people to meet and protest at that specific spot and do a lot of damage. And so it shows that by having an intelligence network, by thinking through the scenarios that could be happening, you may be able to work with someone, a third party, such as Firestorm or whomever your company of choice is, and we can help you craft how you would look for that data and information so that you can keep your product, your people, your company safer. And then again, transportation risks are a big one for most businesses, all businesses, and what's going on in your specific location. If there are interruptions, can you conduct business if your folks can't get to work? There have been recent interruptions in the Penn Central rail in the past, Long Island and others. And if your employees can't get to work, or if your employees have to take alternate travel that takes an extra 2 hours, what are your plans for that? Are you going to penalize the employee? I don't think that's a good idea. So we need to really figure out what an alternative means, either of work, of production, or of transportation could be. I know of one company that did a cost-benefit analysis and realized it was in their best interest to rent some buses, and they actually picked up people. They gave them croissants on the ride in and coffee, and they got employees to work on time. So it depends on what kind of facility you have and what kind of business you have, and get creative about solutions. But you can only do that by working with local companies and businesses around you and collaborate with them as well on social media. And I want you to think about evacuation points as well. Just keep that in your mind as you're working through your programs and your plans, and certainly contact someone at Firestorm to help you work through those more high-level security audits that include something like an evacuation point. Because if we have a former employee coming into the building who's disgruntled, and that employee knows if they pull a fire alarm that everybody's going to go out into parking lot B, that may be where the actual prime target is, parking lot B, not inside the building. We need to be aware of those types of instances. Pardon me for just a moment. Pollen season in South Carolina. So we want to change those evacuation points in a way that is not predictable, in order to that our internal people know but is not predictable, so that when someone leaves the organization, they are unable to know our plans. One other point I'd like to make, and I used to think this was unique to a couple of organizations I had worked with, and it turns out the more I talk to people, the more common it is. If someone leaves your organization today, I would like you to ask whomever manages provisioning and deprovisioning that person into various databases, how long it takes to deprovision them. So your IT team may say, oh, no problem. We turn their email off usually right before the conversation to terminate them. It's a confidential conversation that's had with IT, and we make sure that's done. But what about all of the other databases someone has access to? Maybe you guys use Dropbox or Box or one of those types of storage sites. Are they suddenly deprovisioned from the 118 folders that you gave them access to? Can you do that in one fell swoop? Can you just do that with one click? I don't know. Have you talked to the vendor about that? Is that a requirement of a system that you use? How long does it take to make sure that they don't have access anymore, maybe to some external team site where sensitive information is being posted? So we really have to think through, do we know how to do that really in a way that's comprehensive, and have that conversation with more than your HR team, but with everyone at the table? The reason is important. It's about life and death, because every crisis is a human crisis. Recently, we saw someone return to their workplace and kill 2 managers where they had just been terminated. By creating a robust network of people in combination with technology and the monitoring that we do with that, when an event occurs, you're going to be in a position to receive or send communication much more effectively. And more important, you might be able to identify behaviors of concern that let you know a crisis is coming and then avoid it altogether. In this situation, this person had a primary Facebook page, but when we looked at their Twitter account, it pointed to an alternate Facebook page. This was all public information, and while there were no direct threats, there may be something in a publicly posted manner that allows us to see that there is an escalating behavior of concern occurring. When we use predictive intelligence, the earlier problem is detected, we know the less impact it's going to have on an organization. By using predictive intelligence, we were able to tell our customers and clients in Boston before they were given the official alert that something had happened at the Boston Marathon. This is an image that shows all of the tweets along the race route and someone saying, I'm okay, something really bad just happened by the finish line. The police department actually went back and used the same application that we use, one of the applications we use, but this one in particular, to go back into that moment in time and identify people through their social media accounts who might have video or images that helped ultimately identify who the bombers were. So I don't want you to discount the power of understanding how to clearly analyze your geography, your customer, the language that's used in your area to identify potential situations. We had another situation with an East Coast company that made a product and suddenly has gone, they've been explosive in their growth. They went from 52 people to more than 5,000 in less than a year. In order to hire people, they've been really doing mass recruiting. And what they didn't realize was in one of their manufacturing facilities, they had mass recruited 2 rival gangs. And they were having a great deal of threatening violence, not violence yet, but threatening violence during work hours and work shifts. It was a really big problem. So we need to understand via social, via analysis, and via that face-to-face interaction how we can broaden our networks in order that we might predict significant behaviors of concern, such as that which we saw this week on United Airlines. This is the reverse. This is when the worst thing ever happens to your company and you find out an hour later because somebody sends you a viral video. Now, this situation has so many twists and turns, but immediately when it came out, when the video started circulating, It was circulated by a passenger who had taken a video. There is video that everybody has a smartphone. Please understand, whatever you do in your life, if you're around somebody else, they've got a phone, and there's probably going to be video of it. And there's a top angle, there's a side angle, there's all kinds of angles of this that keep surfacing. And in essence, I think at this point we all sort of know what the story kind of is. And we know what happened. Someone was dragged off a flight. And somehow he got back away, and he came back, and people took video of that. And all of this was upsetting, and just upsetting enough, until that word upsetting came out again and again, because the CEO of United Airlines put out an immediate statement. And that statement said, "This is an upsetting event to all of us here at United. I apologize for having to re-accommodate these customers." When you apologize, you say, "We're sorry." Not for why, just say, "We're sorry, we're sorry." Because when you start to clarify, or when you start to say, "We apologize for having to," you're just going to get in a little bit of trouble on this. So if that's what he's upset about, is he apologizes for having to drag somebody off the plane, but they had to deadhead some staff members, I have a problem with that. Now, afterward, yesterday, he came out with a different statement, and someone actually asked us at Firestorm if we wrote the statement, because it was a much better statement, and we were very proud that somebody mentioned they thought we might have written it. Munoz was selected by PR Week as its 2017 Communicator of the Year. I think he fell down on this first response. You're under no obligation to respond immediately. You need to gather facts. And the other thing is, when officials are involved, you may defer to those officials. You may say, "We are in support of the investigation that is being conducted, and it is being conducted by the XYZ Sheriff's Office, and you may contact them for any further information." More important, before an event happens, is what we really want to look at. We are talking about behaviors of concern, not just after an event. This is a very sad piece of information here. This is from someone who was a shooter. He went to Millard South High School. He was a former student. He returned, and he shot and killed the assistant principal and wounded the principal during his attack. And he posted this. Everyone we have seen on social media, when there have been significant attacks, has somewhere posted a manifesto. It might be a video manifesto. It might be on a blog on Tumblr. It might be on 4chan. But we've seen this time and again. So we need to look for what is the language, what are the keywords, what are the terms, and what is your brand or your business or your organization that it relates to. In the San Bernardino situation of this last week, it's a really tragic situation, and it is all too common. In this situation, 2 people were dead in the immediate report, and a child later passed away who was standing behind the teacher who was shot as the result of a domestic situation. In this situation, the shooter had posted in July, and this comment is out of context. I do want to make that caveat, but it is a voice, it is an approach, and you can't see everything as some of the posts are set to private. But this is just one example. It's the folks who think they have nothing to lose with their evil ways that puts innocent people at risk. Most fed-up people kill the innocent, and I think it's a very troubling, sad thing to see. And we mourn Jonathan Martinez. So we put predictive intelligence in. We build up these networks networks. We become aware of the people around us through technology and through face-to-face interaction. We put conversations into context. And then with tools and training, we help you, or on your behalf, we surface what we feel are behaviors of concern. This then fits hand in hand with our BERTHA program, our Behavioral Risk Threat Assessment Program. And you can certainly learn more about that on our website. Give me a call. We'll be happy to refer you to someone in our organization who can give you more information so that you can keep that gun or that piece of violence from visiting your organization. We're going to help you understand when you see a threat that it's not a threat against you or your business, but maybe it's a song lyric, maybe it's a line from a popular book or a movie at this time. And again, while there are no jokes when it comes to this type of thing, we're going to at least give you the ability to educate maybe your employees or others about how we leverage and use social media and other tools to communicate effectively and not frighten people. And then we can give you and your leadership team some clear metrics around how conversations are evolving, how often something is mentioned, how often something is mentioned in your specific regional location. It is not unusual at all that the language used for guns or for drugs is different from Boston to Texas. There are different types of environments. There are also different geographic considerations. I do have to tell you, though, whether you're in Boston or New York or Texas, there are people doing stuff on the roof of your buildings that's dangerous that you really need to keep an eye on, and they post it on social media. While technology is used to connect, it is the people, however, right, that are posting this information, that are talking. So we need to make sure that we understand who the people are in our organizations or that can affect our organizations. We need to be careful and conscientious and conscious when we're interacting and working with people, so that if there are problems because of a termination or because of behavior at work, or we have a disgruntled client or customer, that we really are clear on what a behavior of concern is and what our next steps might be. We know what threatening behavior is. That's when I say to you, you know, if you don't do this, I'm going to punch you in the mouth. That's a pretty direct threat. But behaviors of concern aren't quite so clear. There tends to be blaming of other people. There may be a fascination with weapons that you observe on a social channel. You may see videos where the person's appearance is changing drastically. They may be pulling out their hair. They may be disheveled. Personal hygiene may really be taking a significant change. So we're looking at those types of things both in that face-to-face interaction, and then also if it's publicly posted information, we can certainly see that as well. And again, remember, in almost every case we've seen, there is some sort of manifesto that is surfaced after the fact. We'd like to surface that before something happens. Okay, I'm going to wrap up with some key points, and I thank you for listening to me for the last 45 minutes. We know that you have an expectation of management of risk in your organization, and we know that your leadership, you are challenged to know what is happening at any given time. And there's almost too much news being thrown at you. I mean, if you have an alert on your phone or on your desktop, it's going off too often. So we have to have a way to filter through the noise to get to what's important to you, your organization, people, customers, etc. And unfortunately, things that we see on social media today that we pick up and maybe a threat or bullying, bullying, it becomes real action all too quickly. We kept a gun out of a school at one point last year. We had 15 minutes before the school day started. We got it done. We got in touch with someone, and the person who was arrested even posted that not only were arrested, they posted on social media that they were arrested, but also that the clip that they had been found. But we want to make sure that we're able to respond to it quickly and in a way where we can protect you and your people. And we don't and can't guarantee any kind of specific results. We're not going to see everything. We're not going to pick up everything. We're not going to know every code word or code action. But wouldn't you want to know if just one extra piece of information that you might get across your desk could help save someone? I know I would. You know, we asked, do you currently use any external intelligence to identify potential threats? And really, you can combine the don't know and the know together, I think, and you get about 67%. That's a big, significant group of people that don't know information that could be affecting their organization. We'd like to talk to you about that. We'd like to help move your company from an immature crisis posture where everything's a surprise and a liability to what we hope is our stage for culture of strategic action. This is a powerful place to be on this far right. I guarantee that organizations that, well, I can't guarantee, but I can kind of think about it, organizations in this last quadrant, they're putting out better products, faster products, better service. They've got great customers. They've got happy employees because things are clearly defined. They have a clear playbook, and that's what we're trying to do. Remember, the greatest obstacle to discovery is not ignorance. It is the illusion of knowledge. Don't fool yourself into thinking you're ready and you're prepared. Sit down with your people, think through it, identify the gaps, and certainly, if we can, let us help. You can download a copy of today's brief, I hope, within about 48 hours on our website, firestorm.com/briefs, and there are many other papers. My dog says hello. I want to thank again the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce and the Association of Contingency Planners for their support in underwriting this and all sessions last year and going forward. We appreciate your attendance today. You can contact me if you have any questions or follow up at Masullo@firestorm.com. You can visit us at firestorm.com. You can go to webinars at firestorm.com, and you can call our toll-free number at any time. Thanks so much. Have a great day. And this is going to end our session for today. Thanks, Bill. Goodbye.